The 2020 annual town meeting of the town of Hingham is hereby called to order. I now invite John Asher, a member of our Veterans Council, to step forward and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Asher.
To the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Mr. Asher. So the town clerk has informed us that the meeting is duly called and we have a quorum. Everyone should have a purple or lilac colored warrant in his or her hand for the meeting. It contains the report committees, a full report from our advisory committee, along with the reports of the Board of Selectmen, the Capital Outlay Committee, the Personnel Board, the School Department, and critically, the Planning Board. There is also a one-page supplemental report from the advisory committee that you should have, and it is very straightforward. It doesn't even take half a page. And it says that with respect to Article 11, which is a prospective transfer of funds to the reserve fund, that the recommendation of advisory as to Article 11 will be no action. We have a number of guests for the meeting. It is our tradition to welcome guests to the Hingham Town Meeting, although of course they cannot vote since they are not citizens of the town. I do not know whether we yet have among us three elected officials that I would call out. If they're not here yet, I'm confident that they will be, and that includes our local Congressman, Stephen Lynch, our state representative, Joan Moschino, and our state senator, Patrick O'Connor. Thank you. I'd like to take the moment to thank Harbor Media for doing what they always do to provide closed-circuit television coverage of this meeting for a later broadcast. Also invite you to turn off your cell phones and refrain, if you can possibly do so, from texting, checking messages, the temperature, or whatever, because it does distract from the meeting, and particularly since we are going to move through the meeting with dispatch that is not inconsistent with the serious business before us. I remind you that the town election will take place a week from today. The details are set forth on page 69 of the warrant booklet. They are also on the town website. I also call your attention, as I do each year, to the Talent Bank application form. It's set forth in the booklet this year at page 95. It's also readily available on the town's website and easily completed online. Both the selectmen and the moderator very much welcome volunteers for service on the many town boards and committees that we have the privilege of appointing citizens to serve on. And it's essential that we continue the tradition that is so vibrant in Hingham of citizen volunteerism. We are very fortunate in the town of Hingham to have so many capable, interested citizens offer service to the town. I'd also invite you to reach out to folks who may be newer to the town. We've been very fortunate to bring new residents into the town, whether at the shipyard and new developments within the community, and they may not be fully aware yet of the town in which they live in terms of our unique form of governance and the opportunity to get involved, and particularly welcoming new people to the town to get engaged in the work of their new home community. We have before us, and I will again just trip right along here, I'll say the usual suspects, our Board of Selectmen, members of the advisory committee who are behind me. They've worked diligently to prepare for this meeting. And I'd like to ask to come forward now the chair of our select board, Karen Johnson, to speak in remembrance of certain town officials who have passed since we were last together at the 2019 meeting. Ms. Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Karen Johnson for the Board of Selectmen. We would like to recognize the following employees who have given valiant service to the town who died this past year. Frank Argero, Clarence Beatty, Stanley R. Campbell, Nazareno DeVito Jr., George W. Eaton, Eleanor Goldsmith, Carol Grotto, Winifred Grodovant, Robert B. Haney, Kathleen M. Jordan, Brian W. McPherson, John S. Orcutt, Patricia O. Ruddy, William E. Russell, John H. Travers Jr., Lucy A. Ward. We thank them for their service.
Allow me, too, to make mention of two people who served in volunteer capacities for our community for many years, who passed away recently, Virginia Tay. Virginia died in March. She had served as the chair of the Hingham Historical Districts Commission and the Historical Commission. She gave extraordinary service to the town over many years and was also the chair of the Hingham Historical Society. And then you may have seen that quite unexpectedly earlier this month in June, Joe Freeman died of a heart attack. He had recently retired. Joe gave extraordinary service to the town with 27 years as a member of our Zoning Board of Appeals. They will be remembered for all their good works. I draw your attention now to the moderator's message. It's set forth at pages 3 and 4 of the warrant booklet. There you will see various procedures for the conduct of the meeting. I will not go over them in detail. I will remind you, however, that all votes are taken here in the first instance as voice votes. Now, I will see as the meeting progresses whether my hearing is as sharp as I am confident it is. If I have any difficulty whatsoever, and I mean this quite seriously, if I have any difficulty whatsoever in counting votes by ear, will simply ask you, as you vote, an aye or nay, to hold up your booklet. So it'll give me a visual as well as an audio hint. Otherwise, Ms. McCracken, we will have ballot votes for all articles. That's a little moderator joke. Okay. Apparently a very little moderator joke. I'll skip over the specifics as to how we go about doing counted votes. They're set forth in the moderator's message, and I suspect they are reasonably well known to all of you. I will simply point out that if in the unlikely event we did have to have a counted vote, which is the opposite of a voice vote where you don't count, we will have a standing vote, and we'll do our darndest to avoid a ballot vote because it would be way too long. Remember that we have speaking limits. They apply to everyone but me, and you get 6 minutes the first time you talk on a matter. You get 3 minutes if you should wish to be recognized and be recognized a second time. And again, I know that the Selectmen and the Advisory Committee and the Community Preservation Committee and the Planning Board each organization has been asked to rely upon the wisdom and the preparation of all of you who constitute the meeting, and to not spend any kind of undue time introducing issues. Again, I remind you that if you do wish to be recognized, get my attention, and then go to the microphone that is the numbered microphone nearest to you. As we begin our work today and continue this tradition of self-governance, I'd like to just ask us to do so mindful that not everyone enjoys the freedoms that we have here in Hingham and that we are about to exercise today. I'm mindful of the famous State of the Union address given by Franklin Delano Roosevelt in 1941, when the world obviously was being torn apart by World War II, and the United States was not yet directly involved. And President Roosevelt, of course, proposed his famous 4 freedoms, freedoms that he said should be enjoyed by everyone, everywhere in the world. And they were, of course, freedom of speech, freedom of worship, freedom from want, and freedom from fear. Now, when you look at FDR's handwritten notes of his speech, he has annotated that his freedom from fear, of course, spoke to the notion that there were nation states that were taking over other nation states with armaments. But we know that there are other freedoms from fear, the fear that you'll be singled out, or the fear that you won't get a fair trial, or the fear that some element of your individual humanity will somehow be counted against you. So let's undertake our work today in a spirit of fellowship and civility, and rededicate ourselves to continuing the still, unfortunately, unfulfilled quest to realize, in the words that are set forth in the preamble to the Constitution of the United States, that the United States is committed to, quote, build a more perfect union. And that's a union which, hearkening back to the words of the Declaration of Independence, is one in which all people, be afforded those certain unalienable rights with which they are endowed by their Creator, among which are life liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So let's move to Article 1. Article 1 asks, will the town choose necessary officers, including a member of the Hingham Fund, the Hannah Lincoln Whiting Fund, for a term of 3 years? The recommended motion of advisory is set forth at page 29 of your warrant booklet, that Karen Sadlin of 33 South Pleasant Street be so elected to serve. Is there discussion? Hearing none, we come to vote. All in favor, please say aye. All opposed, no. Unanimous vote. Article 2 asks, will the town assume liability for damages that may be incurred by work performed by the DCR of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts? This is one we see every year. It is required for the Department of Conservation and Recreation that the DCR be indemnified by the town for work that they do within the community. Is there a discussion on the recommended motion of advisory and the selectmen unanimously in support of this motion? Hearing none, we come to vote. All in favor, please say aye. All opposed, no. It's a unanimous vote. Article 3 simply asks the meeting to receive various reports. They are set forth in Article 3. They include the planning board. I call that out because the planning board is statutorily required to file a report. It's set forth in your warrant booklet. And the reports, as you can see, the recommended motion is that the reports be accepted and that the committees be continued with the exception of the Fire Station Building Committee, which is being discharged with the thanks of the meeting. Is there discussion? Hearing none, we come to vote. All in favor, please say aye. Opposed, no. Unanimous vote. Article 4, will the town accept the report of the Personnel Board appointed under the classification and salary plan or anything related thereto? The recommended motion of advisory, which has the unanimous support of that committee and the Board of Selectmen, is set forth in your warrant booklet. I also note that it says about halfway down after the semicolon say that the town raise and appropriate the sum of $463,454 for the purpose of the vote. And that is before you because certain salary increases and the like are contained in the course of collective bargaining agreements that are entered into between the town and represented units of the town, and that necessary expenditure is what is required to meet the terms of those collective bargaining agreements. Is there discussion on the recommended motion under Article 4? Hearing none, we come to vote. All in favor, please say aye. All opposed, no. It's a unanimous vote. Article 5 asks, will the town fix certain salaries for town officers? And you'll see they include selectmen, assessors, the town clerk, and members of the municipal light board. We see that each year. There have been no changes. This simply would continue the compensation to those offices for the fiscal year, which will begin July 1, 2020 and run through June 30, 2021. Is there discussion? Hearing none, we come to vote. All in favor, please say aye. All opposed, no. That too is a unanimous vote. All right, now we come to Article 6, and we're used to Article 6. It's the budget article. And again, as I looked at the warrant and thought, where can we acknowledge that this is an unusual situation to have all of us out here on a more than a warm day. Some might call it a hot day. And we are now going to focus on Article 6. And what I'm going to do, and this is a slight variation that I'm confident will not detract at all from the work we are doing, is I'm simply going to go through the lines one by one, but not call out the number, the dollar figure. So if you want to hold something, you'll call out hold. So when you look at your warrant booklet, and I'll get to the actual procedure for Article 6 in a minute, what I will do is I will simply go through, for example, schools, police, and I'll give you a moment to look at them, and if you want to hold, don't be bashful, say hold. But I'm not going to read every figure because I am confident, having timed myself, it's going to take a lot less time. So now I'm going to call forward Victor Baltera. Victor is the chair of the advisory committee, and Victor has a maximum of 6 minutes to telescope the extraordinary work his committee has done, working with all of the other town officials to put before you the budget that you have contained in Article 6. Mr. Baltera.
Victor Baltera, 25 Liberty Pole Road, speaking on behalf of the Advisory Committee. This year's budget season came in two parts. If I were speaking with you in early March, right after the committee voted our recommended budget, I'd have said that although there were some challenges, the year was fairly normal. The town's financial position was solid, but we'd had the usual difficulty of matching the increased costs of maintaining services with available revenue. Nevertheless, we balanced the budget, kept level services, added some new initiatives, funded capital within our financial policy, and funded contributions for our long-term pension and OPEB liabilities consistent with prior years. The budget contains some tax relief through the use of the Stabilization Fund, some meals tax revenue, and $500,000 of unused levy capacity. As has been the practice, the budget proposes not to tax to the full extent allowed by law. New initiatives are modest, the most substantial being a procurement officer to take over a function previously served mainly by the former engineering department, a GIS coordinator, a part-time custodian for town hall to help in particular with senior center setup, and funds to cover transition costs for a new IT director when the current director retires. Budget constraints did not allow for other desirable services, especially important education initiatives. The budget is in excess of $128 million and will result in a tax increase for the average homeowner of about 3.17% or $388. The arrival of COVID-19 ushered in the second part of the budget season. This was anything but normal. The advisory committee had voted our budget the week before states of emergency were declared, and this recommendation was based on a revenue forecast which quickly became outdated. By May, the town was predicting some $3.3 million less revenue compared to the earlier forecast due to predicted substantial drops in state aid, meals tax, and property tax collections. Despite this shortfall, the advisory committee continues to recommend the original budget. We believe adequate revenue to support the budget is available by using part of our rainy day fund combined with strict spending controls. The town maintains available reserves known as fund balance, which reflect the accumulation of each year's budget surpluses and deficits. It serves as an emergency fund. The town's financial policy calls for keeping unassigned fund balance, the amount without a dedicated use, between 16 and 20% of our total annual expenditures. We started the year well over at about 26.6%, more than $7.5 million above the upper bound. Moreover, we expect additional contributions to fund balance this year due to a favorable snow year and institution of spending controls when the pandemic hit. Once the water company purchase closes, we expect the town will be reimbursed $1.7 million into fund balance for costs spent for that acquisition. So fund balance has been in good shape. If the current revenue forecast is accurate and the economy returns to normal next year, we can fill the gap with these reserves. The problem, of course, is not simply a shock to revenue, however, but also a lack of reliable information. The state has not voted its budget, so we don't know how much state aid will be. We don't know how quickly the economy will rebound. We don't know if the virus will surge again. We don't know what new operational costs the town, and especially the schools, will face. Nor do we know what federal aid will be available. In other words, we have to vote a budget without knowing our revenue as well as we would like. We believe the current forecast is conservative, but we are not sure. Still, for now, it appears premature to cut services. Therefore, we recommend using some of our substantial rainy day fund to weather the storm. At the same time, however, because revenue remains uncertain, it is wise to continue tight management controls. It is especially important to defer as many expenses as possible until we have a better picture of revenue. That will give us flexibility to adjust spending if the situation deteriorates further, but also avoid cutting services when that is currently unnecessary. The Board of Selectmen and School Committee have agreed to a plan that we think will impose the desired controls. Selected expenditures, although authorized by the budget, would be curtailed until the revenue picture became clearer, and the town, with close oversight from the advisory committee, would match spending to updated revenue projections, whether more or less favorable than originally forecast. We believe that is the prudent approach. But we should not overly rely on fund balance. The pandemic's impact may well extend over several years, so the town could be facing difficult budget cycles for some time to come. Furthermore, using fund balance means that we will have less money available to offset the tax impact of the large capital projects we've had on our horizon if the town chooses to go ahead with them. We think that the proposed budget for Article 6 strikes the right balance, and we recommend your support.
Thank you, Mr. Valterra. And thank you to the Advisory Committee. And thank you to our honorary member of the Advisory Committee, Congressman Stephen Lynch. Perhaps Congressman Lynch has brought a large sum of money from Washington to solve our budget woes in the years to come. He certainly brought the weather. Thank you. Thank you for gracing us again with your presence, Congressman Lynch. So now we're going to go to Article 6. You'll find Article 6 set forth on pages 31 and following of your booklet. And as I said, I'm going to go through it in a slightly different fashion than I have. But if you want to hold a line item, please call out hold, and I will mark that down in my book. Then what we will do, as we always do, is we will vote on all of the items that have not been held. And then we'll go back to any items that may have been held and discuss and debate them. Action under Article 6 will not be complete until we have gone back to anything that has been held so that we don't have to do motions for reconsideration and the like. So we're going to begin with general government at page 31, selectmen, payroll, expenses, human resource, payroll, expenses, reserve fund, town accountant, payroll, expenses, audit, information technology, payroll, expenses, capital outlay, assessors, payroll, expenses, consulting, map maintenance, treasurer collector, payroll, expenses, tax titles, capital outlay, legal services, town meetings, payroll, expenses, town clerk, payroll, expenses, capital outlay, elections, payroll, expenses, Conservation Commission, payroll, expenses, community planning, payroll, expenses, land use and development, payroll, expenses, Bear Cove Park, payroll, expenses, town hall, payroll, expenses, capital outlay, Grand Army Memorial Hall, now public safety, police department, payroll, expenses, capital outlay. The hold on police department, fire department, payroll, expenses, capital outlay, dispatch services, expenses, building commissioner, payroll, expenses, animal control, payroll, expenses, harbor master, payroll, expenses, now public safety utilities, emergency water, street lighting, under education, school department, payroll, the hold on school department, expenses and capital outlay. We'll hold on school in general. The highway, recreation, tree and park, payroll, including overtime, expenses, capital outlay, snow removal, road maintenance, landfill and recycling, payroll, expenses, capital outlay, sewer commission, payroll, expenses, capital outlay, engineering, MWRA charges and debt service, and of course those items are funded from sewer revenue. Human services, the health department, payroll, expenses, capital outlay, elder services, payroll, expenses, veteran services, payroll, expenses, benefits, health imperatives, South Shore Women's Center, the library, payroll, expenses, capital outlay, the recreation, trustees of the payroll, expenses, the historical commission, payroll, expenses, celebrations, now the enterprise fund, country club, payroll, expenses. Those expenses are funded from country club revenue. The Weir River Water System, that's the new name of the water company, payroll, operating expenses, payments in lieu of taxation, otherwise known as pilot payments, debt service, revenue, budgeted surplus. The total there is to be funded from water system revenue. Debt service, now employee benefits, group insurance, other post-employment benefits, contributory retirement, workers' compensation, unemployment, mandatory Medicare, unclassified, and property and liability insurance. That completes the reading of Article 6. I have holds on at least some element of police and school. So let us vote now on all of the items that have not been held. All in favor of the recommendations with respect to allocations that have not been held, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? So it's unanimous as to those. Now we will return to the citizen who held the police budget and asked that voter to identify himself or herself. It's a little more difficult for me than usual to recognize even people whom I might know. And to go to the numbered microphone that is nearest you, and please speak to the issue that caused you to hold the item that you held. And make sure you identify yourself and your street address, please. So I see a voter walking toward microphone 7.
Hello, my name is Madeline Joe. I live at 99 Lozelle Street. The reason that I asked to put a hold on the police department funding is to advocate that we do not increase police funding in this year. And if I may take just a moment to explain why. There should be no increase in funding to the police department for the fiscal year 2020 funding. Hingham is safe because of how well funded our schools are and our community resources. I am sure that we are all aware of calls across the nation to say that Black Lives Matter, as people bravely take to the streets to protest police brutality and systemic racism. It is our responsibility to listen and move away from the institution of policing. Let Hingham set an example for the South Shore and to the nation as a whole by reducing our police budgets and investing those funds in measures that make our community safer for our Black neighbors, for our people of color who live in Hingham or who may want to move to Hingham. One example of how we can use this funding is by moving more money into affordable housing projects for families. This way we can help this can help to change the dynamics of Hingham. Right now, according to the most recent census data, Hingham is 99.8% white. That is segregation levels of our demographics in our town. And it's important that we take a stand to make our communities safer and to invest in the things that actually promote diversity and safety for all. Thank you.
Is there further discussion on the police budget? I see someone moving expeditiously, running wind sprints. It's the sanitizing crew. Yeah. All right. We'll try to pick up the pace on this. So one thing, they say whatever you didn't plan for is what'll happen.
Hi, my name is Brenda Black, 12 Whitcomb Ave. My question about the police budget has to do with the capital expenditures for new vehicles. Wanted to ask whether the police department is planning to get vehicles that are carbon reducing, given that our state has committed to get to zero net emissions by 2050. And this purchase is obviously one of the capital purchases that would contribute to either staying at high carbon levels or beginning to reduce them.
Thank you. Is that a question that's appropriately posed to you, Chief Olson? So he's in microphone 3, needs to be live.
Chief Olson, Hingham Police Department. Every year we go through a review of every approximately 15 to 18 months we buy police cruisers. We did look at the concept of buying electric powered vehicles, but the cost for those are about $4,000 to $5,000 more per vehicle. And considering the savings we would get in expenses and gas mileage, we didn't go that route this year.
Thank you, Chief Olson. Yes, Ms. Black.
The calculations that I've seen look like something like the new Ford, I think they call it, sorry, I'm not a car person, the Ford Introducer perhaps is the name. Anyway, it has a savings of between $3,000 and $4,000 a year per vehicle for use, both for gas. It's a plug-in hybrid, so all of the idling that the police vehicles do, most of it could be handled on electric power, therefore reducing carbon emissions as well as air pollution, which would be a plus for all of us. So it's just ask you to continue to look at the plug-in hybrid models.
Thank you. Is there further discussion with respect to the police budget? I think Mr. Fisher from the Board of Selectmen wishes to be recognized. No, not yet. All right, just
Hello?
give it a go. There you go.
We're good. So I am speaking not really as a member of the Board of Selectmen, but as one of the police commissioners. Your Board of Selectmen are the police commissioners. We are the ones that set the regulations. We are the ones who do the hiring, we are responsible for the firing, and it is our goal, our collective goal, to make sure that there is no racism that is permitted. Nothing approaching racism will be tolerated and has been tolerated. Hingham is different from communities across the country. In Hingham, you have civilian police commissioners. The police chief reports to us. That is not the case in other communities. If there are issues that members of the community have with the way the Hingham police have been operating, please bring them to us and we will make sure that they are appropriately resolved. There was a suggestion about diverting some of the budget to affordable housing. Hingham is rather unique on the South Shore in having achieved its 10% affordable housing, and we're going beyond. We continue to have numerous projects to make sure that there is affordable housing. And I would recommend that we maintain the police budget and continue on the course that we have established over the years of developing affordable housing. Thank you.
Is there further discussion on the police budget? Now, no alternative allocation has been suggested for the police budget, so what you have before you is the recommended motion of the advisory committee, and I'll review it again before we come to vote on it, which is for the police department, line 210, payroll of $5,758,049, expenses of $399,150, capital outlay of $454,500. We now come to vote. All in favor of that allocation for the police department, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. More than a majority having voted in favor of the recommended allocation, the motion is adopted. We now come to schools. And would the voter who held the school allocation please come to the microphone nearest him or her and speak to the issue? That's line item 300 on page 33, school department, which consists of 3 items, as you'll see: payroll of $47 million, expenses of $9.6 million and change, capital outlay of $1.3 million and change. Yes, sir.
Andy Shafter, 32 Middle Street. First, to the woman who spoke about the police budget, I think it's great that you brought that to everyone's attention. I do believe Black Lives Matter.
If you could confine yourself, Andy, to the matter before the meeting, please.
But CPCE does low-income housing. You should follow into that. For me, here's my question about payroll. It's my understanding that our teachers and the people who work in the school get multiple raises a year. They get a cost of living, they get a step, they get a column, they get longevity. And if you look through the past couple of annual reports or warrants, you'll see that usually averages about 6%. So my question is, it's only 2% now. And also, because of the biggest line item, if the chairman of the advisory committee can enlighten us a little bit more on his program, because when we talk about having this, program that you talk about, wouldn't it be best not to start raises right now and wait to see how we go? But I'm just sort of curious, is that 2% right, or is it going to be higher? And then I have a follow-up on the other thing.
Who would like to address that on behalf of the advisory committee? Don't all jump up at once. Mike call on Congressman Lynch. There you go. We'll just create some money. Thank you, David.
David Anderson, 31 Old Colony Road, as a member of the Advisory Committee, Education Subcommittee. I guess 2 things to point out, Andy. Number one, I think that we exercise the same diligence with the school budget this year as we do every year. And I think from at least my personal perspective, the school budget is a significant part of our budget, and it's a significant part about what this town cares about and what makes Hingham Hingham. We constantly wrestle with the challenges of resources and the needs. I found this year's school budget process to be exceptional and very well reasoned and thought out, and I welcome Dr. Austin to this process. It's been quite a year for him to get his feet under him, but it was a very reasoned assessment. Now, on a pre-COVID basis, that is the assessment that we made, and at the end of the day, I think as many people here know, the advisory committee does not provide instruction as to how the dollars themselves are spent. That is a decision made by the school committee and the school administration. So we are working hard to keep the budget within the context of the resources that the town has. On a post-COVID basis, Mr. Baltera explained our approach this year, and I will tell you that the approach this year, if the tiers happen because we find that revenue is not where it needs to be or where we hope it will be, it's going to be a very interesting conversation about how we continue to stay on the appropriate path for the budget. We're prepared. We're going to be continuing to analyze that and look at that, and the school committee and the school administration are all of our partners in that, and we have approached it as a partnership and will continue to do so all the way through.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. Allow me now to call on Michelle Ayer on behalf of the school committee. as Mr. Anderson has just pointed out, come on up. The school committee actually controls the allocation of the funds allocated to the schools, not advisory or not even the meeting. So, Ms. Ayer.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Michelle Ayer, 41 Hemlock Road, and currently Chair of the Hingham School Committee. Thank you for all being here today, and thank you for always supporting our Hingham Public Schools. As Mr. Anderson pointed out, they are one of the linchpins of this town and why people move here. The committee takes their responsibility as a fiscal oversight of the schools and a financial partner to the town very seriously. We have worked very hard this year to develop a budget, and we have also started negotiations with our teachers and our other 5 units for salaries to ensure that we keep those level this year and have approved increases for some of those. We believe that the budget for payroll is more than acceptable for Hingham Public Schools. We value our teachers, we value our staff. We need to pay them appropriately for the incredible amount of work that they do. I want people to understand that in 2020, the burden on public schools is greater than ever. Our students deserve and have legal right to a free and appropriate public education. And we know that that is expensive, but it is what our children deserve, and it is the contract that a community signs up for when they offer public school services to our students. So I thank you on behalf of the committee for your support of our proposed budget. It is incredibly important, particularly in these challenging times. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ayer. Is there any further discussion? Yes, sir. You have 3 minutes.
Is this on? Okay, good. Listen, I did not offer an amendment to take away the increase. My question is, if you go back through the last 2, 3, 4, 5 warrants, the payroll goes up 4, 5, 6% a year. It's only 2% this year. So how is that working without giving them their steps, their columns, their longevity, or are we cutting teachers? So that's what I'm curious about, because the math, in my observation, doesn't make sense. But maybe I don't understand it.
Ms. Ayer?
Thank you. Thank you for the clarifying question, Andy. To confirm, in the Hingham Public Schools, we have factored in salary increases that we expect through our union contracts. In addition, there are many things that impact salaries that could vary the percentages allocated to them. Those include retirements, leaves of absence. So Dr. Austin, the school committee itself, Mr. John Ferris, our director of business services, have put together this budget, and we absolutely believe that that is the correct and appropriate amount that we will need and can stick to for our payroll in the fiscal 21 budget.
Thank you. Is there further discussion? If not, we come to vote on the school department allocation, payroll, expenses, and capital outlay, all as set forth in your warrant booklet. The total is $58,080,851. All in favor of that recommended motion to fund the schools, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. That is a unanimous vote. Now we come to a series of articles that I'm confident we can move through with great dispatch. Article 7 asks for a transfer of sum of money from the Stabilization Fund. The recommended motion is set forth at 38, that the town transfer the sum of $178,836 from the Stabilization Fund for the purpose of reducing your taxes. That requires for adoption a 2/3 vote. Is there discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no?
Right side.
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed somebody. Oh, yes, sir. Come to microphone 6 live, please, and identify yourself.
Yep, Tom Patch. The reason I know everybody wants to get out of here, but one of the things that I think we need to understand is what are bond premiums. You have to understand exactly what they are. I doubt that many people who are not in the financial industry understand that. But basically, bond premiums, to my understanding, it's capitalized interest resulting in issuing debt at higher than the market rate. So you get a lump sum, in advance at the time of the issuance, and basically you end up paying it back over the life of the loan at the higher interest rate. So when we're transferring money through these bond premiums, essentially what we're doing is we're transferring borrowed money. And I want people to understand that. This is basically interest that we're dumping into an account to pay for things. My concern is, for example, in the most recent refunding bond obligation note issued by the town on March, I believe, 13th, they issued a one-year ban, BAN is what they call them, for a coupon rate of 2.5%. You go on the internet, go to Bloomberg or any of these sites, and given the historic interest rate environment that we're in, for AAA rates, municipal rates, the going rate for a one-year note is about 0.25%. So we went to market at 10 times the going rate, which on $11 million plus is going to generate a substantial bond premium. Now, the town, like when you refinance your house with no closing costs, the town typically issues a bond at a little bit higher rate because you don't know exactly what the rate's going to be on the market the day you go to market, but also to pay the underwriting fees, et cetera. So I would like someone either from the Selectman's office or financial to get up and explain what is going on here. Because to me, we all vote today to borrow money. And we put a limit on how much the town administration can borrow. Well, one of the things we don't do is limit the interest rate. Because we assume that the administration is going to act in a fiscally responsible manner and not issue debt at an abnormally high rate, which we're going to have to pay back, and then take the proceeds of that abnormally high rate and stick it into a reserve fund or a stabilization fund, something to pay for other than what the borrowing was voted for.
Thank you, Mr. Patch. I'm going to ask Mrs. Power to address this. If you look in the comment, obviously this is being funded from proceeds of the sale of the former school administration building, the municipal light plant building, the former police station, along with an augmentation by the addition of bond premiums associated with the refinancing of excluded debt. Mary Power.
Mary Power, 1 King Philip Path for the Board of Selectmen. When the Board of Selectmen or the Town of Hingham engages in any borrowing, we have worked in long time in partnership with capital market advisors, our financial advisors, as well as Locklord Bond Counsel. All of those decisions are routed through them. We have received exceptional guidance over the years and continue to do so. All of the borrowing that the town is being done that is happening is in conformance with Massachusetts general law. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there further discussion on the question presented by Article 7 and the recommended motion of advisory? This requires for adoption of 2/3 majority. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. More than 2/3 having voted in favor, the motion is adopted. Article 8 asks whether the town will appropriate from the receipts of the light plant money for the maintenance and the operation of that plant for 12 months beginning July 1, 2020. The Advisory Committee and the Board of Selectmen voted unanimously in favor of support of this article, and the recommended motion is set forth at page 38 of your warrant booklet. Is there discussion? If not, we come to vote on the recommended motion under Article 8. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. That is a unanimous vote. Article 9 asks, will the town limit the number, strike that, will the town limit the total amount that may be spent from the Building Department Revolving Fund to $350,000 in fiscal year 2021? That is the recommended motion under the article. which found favor unanimously with the Advisory Committee and the Board of Selectmen. Is there discussion? If not, we come to vote on the recommended motion under Article 9. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. It's a unanimous favorable vote. Article 10, a similar question. Will the town limit the total amount that may be spent from the Elder Services Revolving Fund to $80,000 during fiscal '21? Again, unanimous recommendation to the meeting from Advisory and the Board of Selectmen. Is there discussion? If not, we come to vote. All those in favor of the recommended motion under Article 10, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Unanimous vote. Article 11. Will the town raise and appropriate or transfer from available funds a sum of money to the town's reserve fund for use during fiscal year 2020, the year that we're in now? And you have a one-page supplemental report from the Advisory Committee, which recommends that no action be taken on the question posed under Article 11. So unless someone wishes to recommend an affirmative motion, we will pass over Article 11 and go to Article 12, there being no action taken on Article 11, and the record will so reflect. Next, Article 12. Will the town vote to raise and appropriate, borrow, or transfer from available funds a sum of money for the purpose of determining the feasibility of locating a new public safety facility and for the conceptual design of that facility to be located on the property known as 335 Lincoln Street, otherwise known as Route 3A, Hingham, Massachusetts? Now, the comment shows that we are now entering a quartet of articles, 4 articles relating to facilities for the police and fire departments and the senior center. If you skip to page 40, you will see that toward the end of the comment from the advisory, it says if the article is approved, it's expected that there will be a special town meeting in the fall of 2020 to approve the purchase of the property, which is currently owned by a private party, and the full cost of design and construction. Construction would then begin in the spring of 2021 with an expected completion date in the fall of 2022. So the question presented here comes to you with the recommendation of Advisory and the Board of Selectmen. The recommended motion, which I will read, it reads as follows: that the town transfer from available reserves an amount not in excess of $250,000 for a feasibility study and conceptual design components. Let me try that one again. Conceptual designed documents related to a new public safety facility located at 335 Lincoln Street, Hingham, Massachusetts. And I believe that Nancy McDonald from the Advisory Committee owns this article. And Nancy, do you want to speak to it? Thank you.
Can I?
Nancy McDonald from the Advisory Committee.
Thank you. Nancy McDonald, 190 High Street, on behalf of the Advisory Committee. I would like to provide some context for the next 4 articles, Articles 12 through 15, as they are all interrelated. As you may be aware, the town has been working for several years to address space issues in key town departments and buildings, including the North Fire Station, the Police Department, the Senior Center, and Town Hall. A brief review of town history tells us that these facilities have served us well for decades, but no longer meet the requirements of modern firefighting, policing, or our growing senior population. The North Fire Station was built in 1941 at the start of World War II. The space currently occupied by the police department was added onto the old high school in 1967 and became the police headquarters in 1998. In 2011, the police department gave up 1,500 square feet for SHREC, the Regional Dispatch Center, when they moved into Town Hall. We began our journey to improve Town Hall in 2012. For the past 8 years, we have passed articles at various town meetings to study and address the burgeoning needs of these buildings and departments, mostly as individual projects. The fire station project began as an attempt to renovate the current building, and it was quickly determined that the current location of North Station is not viable for a modern fire station, and the town has pursued several properties that could meet the location requirements based on response times and the need to be north of the train tracks, but with no luck. Similarly, the town has discussed several sites to locate the senior center, again, with no luck. This changed in February of this year when the property at 335 Lincoln Street, which is the former site of Russo Marine Boatyard on 3A, it's right next to the Fresh Market in front of the commuter boat parking lot. This property allowed the town to re-envision the solution of a number of facilities problems into one elegant solution. Combining the current North Fire Station operations and the Police Department headquarters into one public safety facility allows the Senior Center to expand into the current Police Department space. The new public safety facility is approximately 3 acres, providing adequate space for their buildings, vehicles, parking, and the public visiting the facility. Meanwhile, back at Town Hall, the current Senior Center is only 5,000 square feet. Expanding into the current police space will double that space, enabling more and better programming and services. With the police department relocated, 48 parking spaces also become available, greatly relieving the parking problem at Town Hall. Note that the police department, for them, the location of the headquarters is not a critical concern, as officers have always worked remotely from their vehicles. The project benefits include modernization of the police and fire services and operational efficiencies and cost savings from shared spaces, better location for the fire station to accommodate the growth in North Hingham, proper accommodation for both male and female officers, which the current buildings do not adequately support, and cost avoidance of building a standalone facility for the Senior Center. The 4 articles before you are to start the process of designing the new facilities. A special town meeting is anticipated in the fall to approve construction funds and property acquisition. It is estimated that the final cost will be approximately $28,783,000, which includes $5,474,000 to acquire the property on Lincoln Street. Our town financial advisors estimate that the cost of these new and upgraded facilities will cost the average homeowner between $264 and $321 year one, and between $231 and $261 year 10, depending on the interest rates at the time of borrowing. The expectation is that the public safety facility will be available for move-in in the fall of 2022, and the move-in to the expanded Senior Center will be in the fall of 2023. The 4 articles before you request the following. Article 12 is for the transfer from available reserves of $250,000 for a feasibility study and conceptual design documents related to the new public safety facility. Article 14 is to appropriate from available reserves $525,000 for design documents through the issuance of bid documents for the redesign of the current Senior Center and Police Station. Article 13 asks you to establish a 7-member appointed Public Safety Building Committee with the Fire Chief and the Police Chief serving as ex officio non-voting members, and Article 15 asks likewise for the Senior Center with the Director of Elder Services serving as an ex officio non-voting member. The Board of Selectmen and the Advisory Committee all voted unanimously in favor of these articles. We see the value in it, and we hope that you do as well. Thank you.
So you have a recommended motion under Article 12 set forth at page 40 of your booklets that the town transfer the $250,000 max, not in excess of $250,000, for the feasibility study and conceptual design documents related to the new public safety facility to be located at 335 Lincoln Street in Hingham. Is there further discussion? If not, we come to vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Oh, whoop. Sorry, I missed you. Number 8.
Good afternoon. My name is Anita Bapuji Ryan, and I live at 37 Baker Hill Drive. And I appreciate the comments of the advisory committee. And actually, I think because they spread over the 4 articles, I'm going to keep my comments succinct and also cover the articles that were just referred to. I understand the need for new police and fire headquarters, but I have a number of concerns that I'd like to raise for reflection and consideration as we embark on these big capital projects. And I know this goes without saying that every single dollar matters. I'm concerned that we're overpaying for the parcel of land where the police and fire headquarters are expected to go. The outside consultant valued the land in February 2020, I believe, at either $4 million or $3.7 million. The town signed a letter of intent to purchase that property, and that letter of intent, unfortunately, was signed March 10th for over $5 million. That's unfortunate timing. Nobody's fault. It's just the reality we're facing. You look at the shipyard, there are empty storefronts. The vitamin shop is gone, Panera Bread is gone, the stores are closing. The value of that land is falling precipitously. I'm not comfortable using tax dollars to overpay for a parcel of land to relocate a department that has a current home. I understand the demands, and we need to move with the time, and we need to approve things, but I'm concerned. I'm also concerned on the aggressive timing here. Construction is slated to begin in spring 2021. The town right now can't even say if schools are going to open in the fall. I just think that's aggressive. To be clear, I'm not against any new fire or police headquarters or a senior center. But what I am concerned about is the cost of these large capital projects and the impacts on mandatory services, namely our kids' education. As our town administration is aware, the negative economic effects of this great recession we're experiencing are going to impact revenues down the line. This is not just a one-time impact. Currently, the town of Hingham was dead last in spending on education compared to our 20 benchmark towns, the bottom of the barrel. We spend less dollars than any other towns that have been talked about in the discussion of comparisons. That's embarrassing to me and disappointing to me as a parent, as a citizen, and a taxpayer. We can do better, and our kids deserve better. Wait a second, I'm sure you're saying. This is a warrant about us doing a study for the fire and police headquarters, and you're absolutely right. And yet, I listened to meeting after meeting where the school budget is discussed, and it is pointed out that Hingham ranks 20 out of 20 in spending per pupil on public education. And constantly the response seems to be, there isn't enough money to spend more on education. I understand these large capital projects are supposed to be one time, and we're dipping into our rainy day funds for these 3 studies. But it's frustrating for a town as wealthy as Hingham that we need to do that. Another thing I wanted to raise about the studies, and that's what essentially this warrant is about. But this isn't the only study we're proposing to use our rainy day fund for. There are 3 separate studies. And I wonder, isn't it more efficient to have one study? And I'm so curious about Article 24, which is at the back of the warrant. And I read Article 24, and it mentions that the town is considering long-term options for additional buildings, all of which entails significant capital commitments. A first step in that process is to make the best use of existing buildings before taking on new and large financial obligations. The results of the study have the potential to provide more immediate and lower cost help to certain programs without having to wait for the approval and completion of a large capital project. I'm having a challenge reconciling that article with the articles in this range that we're talking about that all go to studies for buildings. I'm just confused. I think we as a town need to do better at raising revenue. And I think we have an answer. We are a wealthy town. I'm not saying that everyone's wealthy, but I couldn't help noticing as I was coming here on Middle Street, if you look around, the grasses are green. Beautiful green. Now, anyone who pays a water bill in Hingham knows how much it costs. And I have to think we need to come up with ways, whether it's a property tax surtax, something that's leveled on our wealthier citizens who can likely afford a property tax increase without even noticing, without even being here present at the meeting. And I encourage our town to think creatively. I'm going to talk about the senior center. Again, I have concerns about the cost. We're in the midst of a pandemic where our senior population has been hit particularly hard.
You have 1 minute.
We are focused on improving a building so that we can have larger seniors congregate in one building. Is this the right time? As I sit here distanced from everyone, I have to ask, if we spend this money and build it, will they come? And is this a prudent use of money at this particular time? And I'm going to point to the example that was listed in the warrant. Cooking classes. They're currently limited to 6 people in a cooking class. And they want to have a larger facility so they can open up these cooking classes to a large number of participants. I have to question, as we are in the middle of this incredible recession where people have taken large pay cuts, myself included, and lost jobs. Is this essential? Is this what we need to spend our money on at this point in time? I thank you for your attention, and I thank you for all your hard work.
Thank you. Karen Johnson from the Board of Selectmen.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. Karen Johnson for the Board of Selectmen. There's a lot to unpack there. Let me just say that the Board of Selectmen and the Advisory Committee shares the very concerns that you've articulated, and I think probably everybody in the audience does as well. One of the challenges we have before us is to deal with the uncertainties that we face in a responsible manner and in keeping with the sound fiscal stewardship that is the hallmark of this town. One of those One aspect of that stewardship, though, is to continue to plan. And I think that, as Nancy McDonald pointed out, that's what these articles help us do. Their feasibility money, their study money, they need actually legally to be under the auspices of building committees, which Nancy also talked to you about. So that's why, rather than creating one big pocket of study money, we actually have to allocate the tasks to the particular groups that would be responsive to that project. As many of you know, we don't typically come before you with a proposal to build something before we've considered if we can build it and roughly how much it's going to cost us to build. And that's what we're asking you to help us with today by approving the feasibility study dollars. As Nancy pointed out, this has been decades really in the making. And it's actually the relocation, yes, of the police headquarters. It's actually the relocation only of the North Street Fire Station, by Pupelos. The Fire Station Building Committee, of which Nancy served on, studied that site so that we could leave things in place there. It's within a historic district. It's a very old building. And as you've seen, the growth in fire equipment, and frankly, the growth in the fire equipment we need now, given the size of the buildings in Hingham, require actually bigger space. So that footprint was not going to accommodate the modern fire equipment that we needed. And the space also does not accommodate men and women firefighters in a modern facility. So, as we progress slowly with this, 10 years or more, and we are now at a point where I think we're excited about the opportunity to continue to plan. But let me just say this, with the feasibility money, you're not locked into building the building. The feasibility money will give you more information and us more information. Can we build it? How much will it cost? And when might be the prudent time to move forward with it? So the comment written by the advisory committee was a pre-COVID comment. So you're absolutely right. It does posit a rather aggressive timeline. Do we have to move that quickly? If we want to buy this parcel on Route 3A, yes, there is a timeline for that. The Board of Selectmen is continuing to negotiate the purchase and sale agreement with the seller. One of the aspects of that transaction is that land's not fungible, right? We need a way to get out onto 3A. We have actually done extensive GIS mapping to point out where the call volume arises from and how quickly the fire department needs to be able to get to you if you need help. And that's why we are locating or trying to locate the building in that corridor. So, I apologize for my rambling. Apparently my papers are now blowing all over the place. It is a very uncertain time. I will tell you that if you look at page, I think, 21 in your warrant, you will see a very extensive financial management plan that would include the consideration of the expenditure of any dollar in FY21 that the Board of Selectmen, the Advisory Committee, and the School Committee have all agreed to. That would really slow roll any expenditures into FY21 until, as Victor pointed out earlier, we get more information. So I would ask you to join with us to continue to plan prudently in a fiscally sound way for the town of Hingham. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Is there further discussion on the recommended motion? If not, we come to vote on that recommended motion. All those in favor of the recommended motion, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. More than a majority having voted in favor, the recommended motion is adopted. Article 13 speaks to the committee that we've been hearing about. It is recommended that the town establish a public safety facility building committee. The details are on page 40. 7 members, 4 appointed by the moderator, 3 appointed by the Board of Selectmen, Fire Chief, Police Chief, to serve as non-voting ex officio members. Is there discussion on the recommendation under Article 13? If not, we come to vote. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. That's a unanimous vote. Article 14. Will the town raise and appropriate, borrow, or transfer from available funds a sum of money to be expended by the selectmen to be used for any expenses relating to design and engineering services for renovations to the senior center and the space occupied currently by the police department in Town Hall? And your recommended motion is on page 41, that the town appropriate from available reserves an amount not in excess of $525,000 to be expended by the selectmen to be used for expenses for architectural, engineering, other services related to the site design through the issuance of bid documents for the construction for renovations to the senior center and the space currently occupied by the police department and town hall, including ancillary space in town hall and related parking spaces. Is there a discussion on the recommended motion under Article 14? If not, we come to vote. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. More than a majority has voted in favor. The motion is adopted. Article 15, will the town establish a senior center building committee for the purposes of overseeing the design and renovation engineering of the senior center, etc.? Recommended motion is on 41. Similarly, a 7-person committee, 4 citizens to be appointed by the moderator, 3 to be appointed by the selectman, and the director of elder services to serve ex officio as a non-voting member, the chair of the committee to be selected from among its members. Is there discussion? If not, we come to vote on the recommended motion under 15. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. That's a unanimous vote. Article 16. Article 16 asks, will the town vote to amend Section 16 of the general bylaws of the town of Hingham? And you can see what it is. The Council on Aging has a few administrative things it needs to clear up in its charter effectively. They're set forth there. The recommendation of advisory and selectmen is unanimously in favor. These are conforming changes that need to be made in the Department of Elder Services documents and their aging bylaw. Is there any comment on this? If not, we come to vote. It requires for adoption a simple majority. All those in favor of the recommended motion under 16, please say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Unanimous vote. 17. 17 relates to Foster School. Will the town vote to appropriate, borrow, or transfer from available funds a supplemental amount of money, parent, in addition to the funds appropriated in the 2017 meeting, such supplemental amount to be expended under the direction of the 2017 School Building Committee for a feasibility study for Foster Elementary School, for which feasibility study the town may be eligible for a grant from the Massachusetts School Building Authority. This requires for adoption a 2/3 vote as it authorizes borrowing. This article comes to you with the recommendation of the advisory and the Board of Selectmen, and the recommended motion, which requires again for adoption a 2/3 majority, is set forth at page 42 of your warrant booklet. The amount is not in excess of $350,000 for this purpose. Is there discussion? If not, we come to vote on the recommended motion under Article 17. It requires for adoption 2/3. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? No opposition. It's a unanimous vote. We now come to Article 18. Article 18 sets forth most of the recommendations that are before you today from the Community Preservation Committee. Some years ago, we began to do the CPC article in a fashion similar to Article 6. I will do that again today. Since there are so few items that are being recommended by CPC, I will, in fact, here read the amounts. So we come to Article 18. It begins at page 43, relates to a number of recommendations by your Community Preservation Committee. If you'd like to raise a question as I read that out as to any specific items after I've read the item, and this time the dollar amount, please say hold in a good, strong voice so I'll hear you. I'll mark hold next to the item in my book. We'll put the held items aside until I've completed reading the entire list, at which point we'll take up the items that have not been held, as to which no question has been raised, and we'll vote on those items together. Then we'll go back and take up any item that has been held and allow discussion, questions, debate, and any alternative motions with regard to any held item. As with Article 6, action under Article 18 will not be considered to be final so as to require a 2/3 vote for reconsideration or any other procedure applicable to reconsideration until the entire action under Article 18 has been concluded. So now, starting at page 43, I'll take you through Article 18. And again, if you want to hold something, just call out hold, and I'll mark it down. So, Article 18 asks a series of questions, 1 through 6. And the first question asked is, will the town appropriate a sum of money, $272,300, to be used for, or to be used by, rather, the Hingham Affordable Housing Trust for the Hingham Affordable Housing Trust Opportunity Fund? Next, will the town appropriate a sum of $75,000 to be used by the Hingham Recreation Commission to repair the tennis courts at Plymouth River School? Third, will the town appropriate a sum of money in the amount of $8,000 to be used by the Hingham Conservation Commission to resurvey the property boundary of the Laner Conservation Area and do other work on that property? Fourth, will the town appropriate a sum of money, $40,000, to be used by the Hingham Historical Commission to clear the land and repair gravestones at the Canterbury Street Cemetery? 5, will the town appropriate a sum of money in the amount of $500,000 from the Community Preservation General Fund to be used by the Country Club for the design and construction documents of a new pool to be located at 274 South Street? Got a hold on item 5. Will the town appropriate a sum of money in the amount of $32,030 to be used by the Congregation of Second Parish to restore the tower clocks located at 685 Main Street? So we now come to vote on items 1, 2, 3, 4, and 6 under Article 18. All in favor of the adoption of the recommended motion of advisory on those particular items, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? So it's a unanimous vote on 1, 2, 3, 4, and 6. So we now come to hear discussion on item 5. So item 5 is the recommended motion of advisory, and the selectmen to appropriate $500,000 from the Community Preservation General Fund to be used by the South Shore Country Club for the design and construction documents of a new pool to be located at 274 South Street. So would the voter who held this item please come to the most convenient microphone? Okay, is that Mr. Bellier? Mr. Bellier from the Advisory Committee.
C. Bellier, 1 Sycamore Lane, Bradley Woods. I voted against appropriating $500,000 in the Community Preservation Act money for design and construction documents for the pool at South Shore Country Club. That 10-4, 2 against, and 1 abstention vote was taken on February 25th, 2020. At that time, Advisory Committee had known little about the club's dire need for a maintenance facility That will be coming up. And that Foster School was an upcoming building project. However, the proposed public safety complex and the senior center expansion were not known. We can look back now and see all of these proposals before us, but on February 25th, they were not there for us to consider at the same time. A lot has changed since then. As an advisory committee liaison to the Community Preservation Committee, I have listened to and observed the CPC deliberations about the pool since last fall, up to the final vote taken in early 2020. Likewise, as an advisory committee liaison to South Shore Country Club in 2016 and 2017, I attended Country Club Management Committee meetings and was familiar with the financial vulnerability of both the pool operations and golf revenue being both being dependent on good weather for optimum earnings. I have approved reserve fund transfers using taxpayer money, your money, to make up for what should have been user fee operating revenue shortfalls. The town is required by the Department of Revenue to make up for these shortfalls in order to balance the budget at the end of the fiscal year. The Golf Enterprise Fund was singled out by the Department of Revenue for having retained earnings deficits over several years. Revenues did not match expenditures, which ultimately could have a detrimental effect on the town's tax rate approval. My concern is this. If we take on taxpayer debt to finance a new pool, will we also be responsible for revenue shortfalls from golf should they occur? The answer is yes. The town is responsible for shortfalls in the club's operating budget and all loan debt payments from borrowing. The club has outstanding borrowing debt approved by past town meetings for golf carts and utility vehicles in the amount of $283,756 plus interest to be paid in 5 annual payments. I believe the third payment is underway or has been made, but there's 2 more to go. Last year, approved at town meeting was the golf maintenance equipment for $415,000 plus interest to be paid with golf proceeds in 5 annual payments. The first payment, which is $83,000 principal and $10,375 in interest, for a total of $93,375, will be due May 13th, 2021 for mowing equipment already purchased and in use. Adding the proposed $2.2 million maintenance facility, which again is proposed to be paid off with golf revenue, signaled to me that we have 3 borrowing straws to be paid out of the same Coke bottle, which is golf revenue. I understand that this building is critically needed for equipment maintenance and golf cart storage. Should there be a significant revenue shortfall, you, the taxpayer, will be responsible for these 3 loan debt payments, covering the operation budget for shortfall, in addition to paying for a taxpayer-funded pool construction financing. Consequently, I'm in opposition to taking on taxpayer debt, additional taxpayer debt, for a new pool until this existing debt is paid down or paid off in an amount to be determined in order to lower taxpayer exposure to risk and liability. Further, now that we have Foster School, the public safety complex, the senior center to consider, we do not yet know the total cost to rebuild resilient seawalls or to meet the cost to meet affordable housing. Those deadlines will be coming, and if we don't put enough money aside, those will lose our control. So we don't yet know the full scope of the pandemic's fiscal and economic impacts. We do not as yet have a complete inventory of the economic damage or the essential financial needs to recover the local, regional, and other economies we depend on for town revenue. It's presently uncertain what new preventive health measures will be required and what these measures will cost to navigate through this crisis. And I haven't even mentioned the schools yet. I commend the recent steps.
You have 1 minute.
Thank you. That club management has taken to make up for a forecasted potential shortfall of $212,000 and $200,000 $12,474. Golf shortfall due to mandatory COVID-19 shutdown. Thank you for reducing that deficit gap. Finally, I'm pointing this information out to you in full disclosure of what you, the taxpayer, is financially responsible for. Weather-dependent recreational activities carry costs that user fee revenue cannot alone cover. My question to you then, if I do not benefit from the pool, golf, or other club activities, why should I consider paying or subsidizing them? For these reasons I have expressed, I urge you to vote no on the pool for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bellier. Mr. Anderson, also from the Advisory Committee.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. David Anderson, 31 Old Colony Road, speaking on behalf of the 10-vote majority of the Advisory Committee in support of this article. In this article, the South Shore Country Club Management Committee seeks $500,000 of CPA funding for design and construction plans for a new pool at South Shore Country Club. As you have heard, and hopefully didn't find out today, the pool at the Country Club has failed, and Hingham is now without a town pool for the first time in 32 years. The 10-vote majority of the Advisory Committee shared the view that a town pool was an important asset. However, there was uncertainty as to the town's willingness to pay for construction of a new pool, even the scaled-back version of the pool, initially proposed in 2018. The majority of the Advisory Committee therefore believed it was important to put this question to the town. Adoption of the recommended motion would not approve construction of a new pool per se. Should any additional town or country club resources be required for construction, approval from a subsequent town meeting would be required. A vote to approve this article will enable the Country Club Management Committee to develop, refine, and value engineer plans for a replacement town pool. The findings of this effort will inform a subsequent town meeting on the costs and other granular details of the project. The Board of Selectmen and the Community Preservation Committee each unanimously believe this is the process to follow. If you reject this article today, Hingham will continue to be without a public pool for the first time in decades. If you approve this interim step to refine the costs and design, you will have another chance to consider and vote on the capital cost of a replacement pool in the future. I and 9 of my colleagues on the Advisory Committee encourage you to vote in favor of this article. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any speaker from the Community Preservation Committee who wishes to speak to its recommendation? Yes, Mr. Lindner. Going to, sure, come to the center mic. Just make sure that one's live, please.
Hi, Larry Lindner, 22 Water Street on behalf of CPC. Hingham should have a pool. A day like this kind of makes that point pretty clear. And most of our 19 benchmark towns have one, and they operate, and it's okay. And we are currently without a pool. If you vote the $500,000 for the design and construction documents, they won't be ready till sometime until 2021. My understanding is that those documents then have a shelf life of 3 years, so that we don't have to begin to build the pool until 2024. To quote Board of Selectmen Chairperson Johnson when she spoke before the vote on Article 12, I think it's important that we continue to plan. I think we have to assume that the world is going to come back online at some point. If you went to a pool any summer before this, you'd see tons of kids in it, really enjoying themselves. It's a vital part of our town, and I urge you to vote this preliminary step.
Thank you, Mr. Lindner. Yes, sir, at microphone 6.
Yes, Alan Perrault, 39 Elm Street. My discussion is not in opposition to having a pool. I believe we are aiming too low, however. And before, I've been on a number of committees. I chaired the Bathing Beach Trustees, and currently the swimming for the town of Hingham is at the bathing beach, and the lifeguards are through the rec department, so it's a subject I'm somewhat familiar with. But at the same time, and I apologize to anybody in these committees who spent time, and I apologize for being late in making comments. However, I think a town of the size and quality of Hingham should have more than an outdoor pool. And I think to spend $500,000 for an outdoor pool without a structure, to have that percentage of money of an anticipated $7 million expense, for one, I think is excessive. For example, our new bathhouse at the bathing beach had a construction cost of about $1,250,000, and the architectural cost was $75,000. So I think for an off-the-shelf item like an outdoor pool, I'm not sure it justifies having the amount of expense that is here. I'm not opposed to the idea. I think the quantity, the amount of money is too high. I also think that a town like Hingham, if you're trying to get synergy with the Greenside Grill and other activities, a pool alone, especially an outdoor pool, is going to have limited throw-off. We are right next to the Old Colony Rail Station, and if we ended up having a facility eventually that was an indoor facility with recreational facilities, I believe the membership could be way greater than the membership for an outdoor pool. So again, my comments are not that I'm opposed to an outdoor pool. I question spending this much money, and I think that we should look at a broader scope. When I was on the Harbor Development Committee, for example, Deirdre Anderson ran a survey where we surveyed the townspeople of what their priorities were. And I know there have been committees that have studied this, but I think a broad amount of people across the town would prefer something a little more in excess of just an outdoor pool. And I think you could more adequately raise funds if you had, and I know they've looked at this before, but as someone who's worked on the bathhouse project, that project has evolved over 3 or 4 years. We had to go back to the drawing board, and we ended up with a better project. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Peralt. Is there further discussion on this item? Yes, sir. I heard a voice.
Sue Sullivan.
Oh, Sue Sullivan, yes.
Hi, I'm Sue Sullivan, 26 Governor Andrew Road. I'm speaking for the Country Club Management Committee. And I'd like to speak to a couple of things that were said today. I believe Mr. Bellier presented a kind of a skewed version of our revenues over the years and what's been given to the town, what hasn't. And also, I'd like to present what has gone on at the Country Club over the years and why it's important for everyone to be part of this asset, whether we utilize it or not. If we decided to vote on everything as to whether we use each individual thing, we wouldn't have half of anything in the town. If I'm not going to use the senior center, am I not going to vote for it? I think that's a faulty premise. I'm going to speak to, though, that the Country Club was purchased over 30 years ago for $8 million, and is valued today at over $18 million. In that time, the Country Club Management Committee has paid back all of the debt related to that purchase through the operations of the club over the years. Mr. Bellier spoke about the fact that we've taken reserved fund transfers. What he didn't say is that the total of the reserve fund transfers over the years, it was 8 out of 30 years for a total of $718,015. In the other years, our revenue surplus gets returned to the town. I don't have that figure right now, but over the years, that's been tremendously higher than the $718,000 that he's referring to. What does the Country Club bring to the town? Not only does it bring, club activities. We're home to the Hingham High Girls and Boys Golf Team, free of charge. We're home to the Notre Dame Academy and Cohasset golf teams. We have junior golf club members. By the way, I'm going to speak very fast on this. because I'm cognizant of the time. Okay? We have 75 junior golf memberships, 900 permitted rounds, 850 green fee rounds a year. Employs over 20 Hingham College and high school students. We work with the Veterans Agent to employ several Hingham veterans. We have Wednesday nights golf with over 120 participants a year. We have the Selectmen's Cup Golf Tournament, benefiting the 4th of July parade. We host 7 bowling leagues, primarily senior citizens through the year. We have golf simulators. We have a home of the Greenside Grill. We have a partnership with the Hingham Recreation Department, holding sports camp 8 weeks out of the year. This not only provides golf lessons, swim team, swim lessons, it employs 35 counselors, lifeguards, and managers. Okay? We have the rec camp utilizes the pool, the bowling alley, and for over 300 kids. Okay, we also have a partnership with SNAP, Special Needs Athletic Partnership, summer camp that includes 32 participants with one-to-one staff. We employ, again, SNAP employs Hingham residents, mostly teenagers, and we provide programmatic space, including bowling. In addition, we assist other town departments. We provide mowing and field maintenance services, and we've just recently installed a weather alert system that allows all the fields in Hingham to take advantage of when there are lightning storms and all coming in, that the alert is sounded to every field. These are in addition to the thousands of rounds of golf that get played every year at the course. The pool itself, okay, what we are voting for today is for the design and construction plans for a new pool. We have today, if you were to say today, there would be hundreds of people at that pool, minus COVID, okay? We're not planning for today, we're planning for the future. And what we're looking at is that if you question what the pool alone means to the pool, you'll see why it's important by some of the statistics I just provided, and some additional ones. There's 200 plus pool family memberships, 42 individual memberships, and then we also have over 13,000 pool visits every season. Now, yes, is it seasonal? It goes up, it goes down. Golf is seasonal. You're right. But overall, these are the dollars that we have come up with. Mark Thorell from the Recreation Department has done forecasting for us for year over year seasonal revenue for a new pool, and has basically come out with that on average, it should return $6,000 above expenditures each year. People will say, why are we not planning for a bigger pool?
You have 1 minute.
Enclosed pool. Thank you. An enclosed pool. We looked at all of that, but we're trying to be fiscally prudent. Okay? What we have is a pool that replaces what we have now, and will have the ability to have a bubble placed over it in the future. So we are planning for the potential for long term. And just to answer Mr. Peralt's questions, our cost of this study is 9% of the total anticipated construction costs of the pool itself, and that is well within guidelines of what the study should provide. Thank you.
Thank you. The gentleman at microphone 6.
Jim Nelson, 291 Rockland Street. I just want to speak to the value of the year-round facility, and glad to see the speaker just mentioned the bubble capacity, because it's been written in many statements, but not mentioned in the report, that it will be designed to accommodate a bubble providing year-round weather protection, which is very valuable. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Watson. Mr. Lindner, speaking the second time, you have 3 minutes. You've used 15 seconds just walking to the microphone.
Thank you. I just want to address a point that Mr. Peralt made. Alan, I would love an indoor pool as well, and so would the country club. And a couple of years ago, they tried very hard to raise the money for design and construction documents for just that, And they made a deal with CPC to kick in some of the money, and they would raise more than half of the money through private donations to get the construction documents for a much more expensive undertaking. And they thought, they could go to the people with the very green lawns and get this money. And they found that there was just not an appetite for it. There were donations made in excess of $100,000, but they needed $350 in private donations on their end, and they couldn't come up with it. So they prudently scaled back and said, as Sue Sullivan said, and as Jim Watson said, okay, let's do design and construction documents for an outdoor pool, but with the capacity to have a bubble put on it, and also to have vents put on the sides so that it could be used outdoors in shoulder seasons, and also so that the bubble could be put over the restroom facilities so that in the cold weather months, you could go straight from the pool into the bathrooms. You're not like running outside like in a Finnish sauna. So all of this has been thought through. They wanted what you suggested. It wasn't possible. They prudently scaled back and are still planning forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Peralt.
Microphone. Okay.
Item 6, microphone 6, rather.
I'll be brief. I respect Larry. As the Bathing Beach trustees and former Harbor Development chairman, I've been to CPC many a time. So it's not that I question your work. I do think overall, I'm going to use the analogy again of the existing bathhouse. In the 2007 master plan, they envisioned us converting the existing bathhouse into a snack stand. That didn't work economically. It wasn't big enough. We ended up getting grant funds and ended up with a bigger and better building. I personally would be willing to work on a subcommittee. I talked to Mr. Gaskell, who used to be on a South Shore Country Club committee, who's an engineer. I think we could have other people work together with this committee to try to, in some ways, revisit the idea of a more complete facility. The swim team for Hingham High can't use an outdoor pool. I know eventually we could put a bubble over it, but I think we're setting too low a bar. And I believe a town like Hingham should have the facilities towns like Duxbury have. And I think we could revisit it, and I think even the fundraising, Larry, could be revisited. I'm not sure it was presented. I know I wasn't polled on. I think there are other people, if we started to look at it, would more likely support a more complete facility than just a pool. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Peralt. Is there any voter who wishes to add something that we have not yet heard on this matter? Yes, sir.
Good afternoon. Sean Tolan, 9 Pine Grove Road. I just wanted to bring up a couple of points that hadn't been mentioned previously. Related to the full year-round pool, I just wanted to note that we have looked at that previously, but just to add, the bathrooms was going to increase costs by $1.3 million to get them up to code, and we just didn't think that that was a financially prudent way to proceed at this time. Just wanted to note that. Secondly, I don't know that this has been mentioned. If you look at our comparable towns, they all have pools, and I think Hingham and its residents are deserving of such as well. Canton, Cohasset, Concord, Lexington, Weston, Needham, Wellesley, Dedham, Braintree, Weymouth, and Westwood. Like I said, I think that the residents and families of Hingham are deserving of a pool. And lastly, I just wanted to mention the consideration of how it would affect our property values. I think that if you were to poll some of the real estate agents in the area, they would note that it's a topic of conversation that Hingham does have a public pool, and it's certainly a value-add benefit to the town of Hingham. Thank you.
Thank you. If there is no further discussion, we would come to vote on the one held item, which is, will the town appropriate $500,000 from the Community Preservation General Fund to be used by the South Shore Country Club for the design and construction documents of a new pool to be located at 274 South Street? All in favor of the recommended motion, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. More than a majority has voted in favor. The motion is adopted.